Vice Chair Carla Torres de Luna. Here. Commissioner Damian Perez.
Here.
Commissioner Julio Rodriguez.
Present.
Commissioner Peter Hernandez, for the record, is absent far. And for the record, Chair Stephen Belong is also absent.
Thank you. And Commissioners, is there someone who would like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I'll go ahead and lead.
Thank you.
All right, ready, salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And this is the time for anyone in the audience for public comment for an item that's not on the agenda within the subject matter jurisdiction of the commission. Speaker cards are available in the lobby and are to be completed, given to staff before speaking. When the commission secretary calls your name, please come to the podium, state your name, city for the record, speak to the commission. If you're joining us by Zoom, click on the bottom of your screen to raise your hand. If you're joining us by Zoom using a cell phone, press *9. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes with a maximum of 30 minutes per subject. Please note that the state law prohibits the commission from discussing or taking action on any item on the agenda. And do we have any?
We have no speakers.
Do we have, so we can move on to consent items. Do we have questions from the commission on items on the consent agenda, or are there any items that the commission would like to pull?
No.
Okay. Do we have, staff, do we have any public comments on items from the consent agenda?
We have no speakers.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve. I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No abstentions. Motion carries. And moving on to public hearings, may we have the staff report for item 6.1?
Good evening. The project before you is an amendment to tentative map 2021-5 for the Kramer Commons subdivision. I have quicker. So this is the location of the project. It's along Chapel Road and Pacific Way and just southwest of Highway 25. So the project location. The project is an approximate 18.24 acre vacant lot currently. It's in the low density residential performance overlay zoning district. This zoning district allows for single family detached units, but it also allows for modified development standards with approval of a conditional use permit for a planned unit development. This project does have, when it was originally approved as tentative map 2021-5, does have an approved conditional use permit for that planned unit development. So this project is part of the Chapel Road master plan, which includes other housing developments and commercial component, which offers different public benefits. Like commercial component, proposed dog parks, other parks, bike paths, walking paths, things like that. So project description. So the project is proposing to amend tentative map 2021-5, which was formally approved as a single family residential subdivision known as Kramer Commons. What the amendment will do is it'll reduce the total unit lot count from 90 to 86 lots. It'll designate 70 lots for single family detached and 16 lots for duet single family homes. Parcel B will be designated as a location for a required sanitary sewer lift station. The streets will be realigned to allow for the relocation of the 16 duet style lots The 16 duet-style lots are being moved, and the next slide will show the map. But the duet-style lots are being moved from the northern part of the parcel to the southern part of the property, and that's so they can better achieve sound mitigation requirements. Because as is approved, the homes are closer to Highway 25. And then also, as part of the amendment, the park will increase from about 1.5 acres to 3 acres. Access will continue as is currently approved under TM 2021-5, where primary access will be along Chapel Road, and then you have secondary access along Pacific Way. So this is the proposed map. It says a laser, doesn't it? And it doesn't really show on the. Anyway, so the lots running along the southern part of the property, there's 16 lots there. I think there's 20 lots there, but 16 of those lots are for the duets. They've been relocated from the very northern part, running along Highway 25. Those lots are now single-family detached. Also, the park runs from the southeast portion of the parcel, and it runs along Highway 25 to the northwest part of the parcel. And it's the park, if you can make out on the map, it says Parcel A. That's the park. So as I mentioned, the tentative map 2021-5 was also approved with conditional permit 2022-2 for the plan unit development. And what that did was created project-specific development standards. And those development standards are not changing, just the map is being amended. So briefly, this table shows the development standards for the R1 zoning district, the low-density residential, that's on the left. And then there's the approved project-specific development standards on the right. So for example, the minimum lot size will go from 5,500 square feet. Now it's 4,400 square feet, and the average lot size is about 4,500 square feet. And then you can see that the development standards have changed slightly from R1 to the project-specific development standards. And so this is this one is specific to the single-family detached lots, and this table is specific to the development standards of the duet-style lots. Minimum lot size 5,500, and then for the duet project-specific development standards, the minimum lot size is 3,360, with an average lot size of 3,393. So a little bit more about the amendment. The project was previously approved under Resolution 2022-22. That was for the tentative map. And the project has been granted an automatic extension under AB 2729. And with the new extension date, the current extension date would have been November 17th, 2025. It's since been extended to, November 17th, 2024. It's now been extended to May 17th, 2026. Also being amended, along with the map, are the conditions to make them project-specific, to be reflective of the amendments. So a couple of the conditions that are changing. This is the former condition 11 reflects the timing of construction for the duets in the single family. So the building permits for the 16 duet units must be issued prior to the issuance of the building permit for the 35th single family detached unit. And occupancy must be granted for all 16 units ahead of occupancy for the 70th single family detached unit. So that condition's just being revised to reflect the reduced lot count. Also, condition 81, that's been revised to reflect the current fair share cost for infrastructure improvements. So the project is complies with the general plan. It's in the low-density residential general plan designation, which it's intended to promote and protect single-family neighborhoods while providing sites for single-family detached units, also zero lot line single-family units, and plan unit developments. As I mentioned, this project does have a conditional use permit for a plan unit development that was approved with the tentative map 2025-1. The project also is within the required density of 1 to 8 dwelling units per acre. It's approximately 4.72 dwelling units per acre. It also complies with the health and safety goals set forth in the health and safety element, namely for noise reduction, because of the location, because the parcel abuts Highway 25. There's noise requirements for this. So the applicant had, when they originally applied, they submitted a noise study, and that noise study outlined mitigation measures and then also attenuation measures that the applicant would put forth for the project. And then the noise requirements also complied with the health and safety element goals. One of those requirements is that a berm along, as opposed to a sound wall, a berm along Highway 25 would be a minimum of 10 feet tall. And then also that when the applicant applies for the site and architectural for the duets, that they have to provide documentation showing that further noise attenuation would be implemented during the design and development of the individual units. The project complies with the zoning code. Again, I mentioned it's in the low-density residential performance overlay zoning district, which fosters development that meets a range of densities, that complies with the general plan, that has flexible standards, and that implement policies and programs of the general plan. Again, this project complies with the zoning code because it's got specific. It has an approved conditional use permit for the plan unit development that designates specific project development standards. The project is in compliance with CEQA. So for the Chapel Road master plan, the City of Hollister certified the environmental impact report for that project. That project studied a certain number of homes. Tentative map 2021-5 was included in that and still continues to meet what was studied, even with the amendments, and no further study is required. Just to summarize, the project amends tentative map 2021-5, which had been previously approved and adopted. And many of these amendments relocating the duet lots to the south is to meet noise requirements, mitigations, and then attenuation. The project as proposed is consistent with the low-density residential general plan designation, and is also in compliance with the R1 LPZ, the low-density overlays, the low-density residential overlay zoning district. So you have a couple of options. You can, one, adopt a resolution approving tentative map 2021-5 amendment, subject to the findings and conditions contained in the draft resolution. You can adopt a resolution approving tentative map 2021-5 amendment with findings or conditions of approval as modified by the commission. You can deny the project, or you can continue the hearing and direct staff to provide additional information or clarification if that's needed. Staff does recommend option 1.
Thank you. Do we have questions from the commission?
Just for clarification, so the changes would be the duets, correct? It sounds like reducing the single-family unit homes for duets, basically.
So the duets were already approved as part of tentative map 2021-5. You're just reducing the total lot count, and that was mainly so they could relocate the duet lots from the north part of the parcel to the south.
Ah, got it. Okay.
Yeah, so the duet lot count isn't changing.
Okay.
Yeah. The single-family detached lot count is changing.
Gotcha.
Is this approval for the entire project or just for the amendment? Like, what is the scope of the approval?
It's for the amendment because the tentative map had already been approved and adopted.
Okay.
So you're basically approving the changes. What's that?
Right, the 4 units or 5 units.
The reduction, right?
Difference, basically.
Yeah, the reduction in units and then the change to the design, which is relocating the duets.
And is this CUP similar to a density bonus?
No. So the conditional use permit for planned development is the way that the city previously did planned developments, which we've since modified. I believe that was in 2022. We changed the code, but at the time that this was approved, that was the way that projects would get their own development standards. So essentially, this project kind of has its own zoning because of that CUP. So they have reduced side yard setbacks, the reduced lot size, which comes with the performance overlay zoning to allow smaller lot size. And then they also needed it for setbacks for the duets because they share a wall. So that was a 0 lot line. So it has slightly different standards from your standard R1 zoning because of that PUD. And that's still valid because the map is still valid. And like Brendan mentioned in his report, they qualified for an automatic 18-month extension. So the current map is still valid until next May. And then this would be amending it. So instead of the current map, they would be moving forward through the process to develop this map.
Other questions?
And just to confirm, the unit reduction was not in the duets, it was in the single family.
Single-family, that's correct.
I have a question. I'm just curious why this is to reduce the noise. This is to mitigate the noise. Was that the purpose?
Generally to better mitigate the potential noise impacts.
So my follow-up question is, I'm just curious, we know the 25 has been there. Why wasn't that a consideration from the beginning? Do you know?
I'm sorry, 25.
The Highway
The Highway
25?
Highway 25?
Mhm.
I
It
can
was,
speak
yeah.
to the original approval a little bit. I think that at the time that this project was originally being reviewed, the city was not processing the site and architectural design of the duets at the same time as the map. This is a modern submittal. We would make sure those design were incorporated into the project so we could review it as a whole. But part of the Chapel Road master plan overall, which this is just one of 13 lots that's within it, was the goals of the council were to avoid sound walls on 25. And so there was always a berm requirement instead to mitigate noise. But there was also a desire to have homes fronting onto that linear parkway to avoid them, backing into it so that they had more direct access and the view of it. So this parcel in particular needed additional noise analysis, and it seems through the applicants working on getting towards their civil and their specific improvement plan submittals to the city to develop the map, that in order to design those duet lots to meet the noise study that they did and the requirements for the duets, because they have a slightly different noise requirement than the detached single family, it made more sense for them to propose this amendment so that they can move the duets and better meet that noise analysis.
Thank you for explaining. Other questions before we go to the public hearing?
Yeah, it was just kind of a question, follow-up question with the noise. So I do know on Highway 25, and this may be completely be going out of the purview of the scope of this, but it's important, I think, to get this on record. So I know Highway 25, the sound walls that are on Highway 25, that's a Caltrans mitigation, right? Those big sound walls that are built.
it's not necessarily a Caltrans mitigation. It would have been to mitigate noise in those subdivisions. So we have the Cerrado subdivision to the south.
Right.
And when the Chapel Road master plan was going through the annexation process and the EIR, part of the council's direction was that they did not want to continue the Soundwell corridor that we have as we move north. And so this project and other projects in the Chapel Road master plan area are obligated to mitigate noise from the highway still, because that's required to
Right.
develop, but in a way that doesn't include sound walls, because that was the city's desire.
Okay. Yeah, I'm on the opposite. Like, why
Yeah.
didn't we? But now that makes sense. Thank you
Yeah,
for
so
clarifying.
it was, all these past developments that are currently built created this soundwall corridor, and the city wanted to move away from that as we continued to develop on and around Highway 25. So this project is not putting in a soundwall.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for that clarification.
Then I just have one more question. Which city council was that? Is that a recent or is
This
that
would have been in 2018, 2019. So
a few years?
the annexation was in 2019. The Chapel Road Master Plan EIR began in 2015. So it's been quite a few years that, not this map in itself, but the Chapel Road project overall has been considered.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, this project was considered an infill project when it was first proposed, and it was a hot topic because ultimately it's still towards the outskirts of the town. So it's upon interpretation, I guess, which whoever has the legal backing has been the issue.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and open the public hearing at 6:22. And do we have a presentation from the applicant on this item?
We do. Yeah, we have the applicant on.
Oh.
Yes, we have Peter Smith online.
Hi, my name is Pete Smith. I am the civil engineer for the applicant. I'm here to answer any questions.
Oh, can you-
Any questions you might have.
Mr. Peter Smith?
Presentation.
It's really
Or
quiet.
can we?
I think it might be
we're-
our system. Hang
I
on.
don't think
Yeah.
YouTube can interpret that.
Give us a minute, Mr. Smith. I could hear it on this one, but
I can hear it too.
you could hear it too?
Yeah.
Oh, so all of our,
Pete, if you could just see if your sound comes out. I think we're just having an issue on our speakers on our end, but we can hear you. We might not have the best recording, but if you could just.
Can you hear me now?
What if I put the microphone there?
Hello?
We can hear
yeah,
you. It's just a little soft.
Yeah, we can hear you. I
It's
think
just very quiet.
we can move forward. I think it just might affect the recording, but I think it'll be okay. All right, go ahead. You'll have 5 minutes.
I'll talk loud, if that helps. Madam Commissioner, members of the commission, my name is Peter Smith. I'm with HMH Civil Engineers, working for the applicant. We didn't have a presentation tonight, but I'm here to answer any questions you might have to help understand the project and the changes.
Does anyone have any questions for the applicant?
I don't.
No, looks like we do not have any questions. I think the only thing I noticed, which was a positive, is the, in one of the slides about the park,
Yeah, the park's increasing from
parks increasing.
about 1.5 acres to 3 acres. I believe that's what's on the map.
And was there any other changes besides just the park increasing, or to the applicant?
Yeah, the park increased when we rearranged the lotting to move the duet to the south side. We had a few more lots near the cul-de-sac that were kind of awkward to begin with, but it made sense to, when we cleaned up the alignments and the layout, to remove those. So that it's just north of the cul-de-sac got larger, which increased the park.
Thank you. So no other questions from the commission? Thank you. We'll go ahead. Do we have any public comments on this item?
We have no additional comments.
Okay, then we will go ahead and close the public hearing at 6:25. Is there any further discussion from the commission on this item? What do y'all think?
I'll make a motion to adopt agenda item 6.1 for the amendment on the tentative map 2021-5 Crammer Common subdivision to reduce lot count from 91 to 86 lots and relocate the duet units.
Second.
Okay. Do we want to go ahead and vote, or is there any discussion? We're good? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Item 7.
So, Madam Chair, really quick, before we move on to that item, you weren't at the past meeting, and so just a quick update, ultimately saw the agenda, and I didn't get a chance, and I apologize for being late. I had a very busy day, but the minutes were incorrect because they didn't have any input, which brings it to my next point, that the inputs and the other commissioners that are present were here, where I made recommendations, basically recommendations to send to the city council on amending the planning process, or at least considering a little bit more of transparency. And, I would argue efficiency. It sounded like the commission agreed. And there's no minutes reflecting any of that information. And then also and I know the city council attorney said that she would consider basically whatever the agenda items that I had made recommendations. If there was any legal issues, got no information on whether that was an issue or not, which I would argue it wasn't. But regardless, the final point is there was no added, we all agreed, and so there was no added agenda item that talked about these, because it was really supposed to be a discussion on the policy considerations or recommendations to the city council. So I'm really disappointed. I don't understand. There's no really excuse in my mind why this didn't come forward. And I did talk to City Councilman Resendez about it, and he's going to definitely address it. So I'd be even interested in maybe suspending the rules and amending the agenda to include that item, because I think it's really important. I mean, if we really want to see economic development, which technically the goal of the general plan and ultimately the city council in adopting it, then we need to address these issues. I keep getting calls about issues with the planning process, yet we got a presentation, which I appreciate, but now we're looking into remedies, and somehow it's being sidelined, which I don't appreciate.
So procedurally, is your request to amend to go back and
agenda.
look at the minutes?
My understanding was that what we're asking for was out of our scope, out of our bylaws. So maybe that's why they didn't make it in, and that was my assumption.
And I appreciate that, but
Yeah.
ultimately there was no follow-up, right? That was the commitment. It's a recorded meeting. You can pull it up yourself. Hey, we're going to let you know if there's any issues. I mean, at the end of the day, we're asking for recommendations, right? We're not actually making policy ourselves. They could say, go fly a kite, right? But it doesn't. At the end of the day, it's like it's something that it was a consideration because we had a thorough discussion about it. There's a whole reason for a whole agendized conversation about all these different issues. We even had applicants here even giving their input about the potential amendments, and so it just falls flat. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, if that's the way the planning commission wants to run things and staff, then personally I think I could use my time better if our input doesn't matter, right? At that point, like, it should be just de facto the city planning department making decisions without the authority of the planning commissioners that are volunteers in this position.
And I do remember that we had asked some similar questions 2 months ago.
I believe so.
Yeah.
It started leading that way.
Because we were asking about policy, and so it sounds like it followed up. Is there a way, I guess, then procedurally, how do we go back and?
So you can reconsider approval of the minutes, is that what you're
Right,
asking?
yes.
So to reconsider an item that's been approved, somebody who voted in favor needs to make a motion to reconsider, take a vote to reconsider. If there's a majority vote, then you can go back and reconsider that item.
Okay. So that would be, Is there a?
So I'll make a motion if we could reconsider.
It has to be somebody who voted in favor, so any of the other three can make the motion.
To reconsider the
So-
minutes.
So
to amend
so
them.
reconsider the minutes, you're saying for 7,
To open it up and add these items back in.
Yeah, you'll just go back to the consent item 5.1 and just redo what you already did, essentially. So the chair will, first you'll vote to reconsider. If there's a majority that votes yes, the chair will say, we'll now open item 5.1 and just basically redo the item that you've already done.
For the agenda.
Mhm.
So
I-
reconsider amending the agenda of 5.1, right?
was it 5 point? Yeah, I'll go ahead.
You're ultimately going to make two votes. The first one will be like, do we all want to reconsider it, yes or no? And then if you vote yes, then you'll go back, reconsider it, and take a vote.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion to open up agenda item 5.1, approving the October 23rd, 2025 minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so now we go ahead and we have the
So-
discussion about the agenda.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
go
The
back and
minutes.
redo the whole thing, just
Okay.
like you would have if.
So, and I'll try to be, I don't want to hold people up, right? We all have busy lives. But these were the considerations and roughly, right? That was the whole goal is I give rough recommendations. You know, the professionals in the room can help clean it up and present them as potential recommendations to the city council. So in the beginning of the conversation, I remember mentioning that I had, you know, for the sake of clarity for an applicant, right, there was partly the issue was applicants come, they apply, and there was even discussions about a $1,500 required review fee. And so, and technically, it was almost like a there was no like record keeping, and there definitely was any real formality to the meeting. So I had asked for like an addendum. Number one is an addendum that actually explains the rights to the applicant and lets them know what they can expect as far as the process goes. Number two was I personally, I made the sentiment that I don't agree with a fee if there's not any seriousness to it. And even regardless of it, I still think it's an important stage, right? Because an applicant comes, they're expecting ultimately, like, they really want to invest in this community. They want to pay the fees because they want to get direction on the planning process, making sure they're following the law. But there was no record keeping. Even the city manager had mentioned that they didn't keep records. I completely disagree with that. We should know what's going on from the first time of the communications, especially when they dump money and they're already, anytime someone dumps a check, they're not just putting $1,500 down. They're probably like buying the property. They're already securing things. So there should be a time clock from that time. And that's why there needs to be record keeping of that preliminary review. And basically, I don't think there should be a cost.
Can I make a suggestion? Because really what we're talking about is inaccurate minutes. And so tell me.
No,
if-
I'm making my recommendation. So yeah, if I could finish.
Well, but what, if the minutes need to be amended, maybe the best approach would be for staff to go back and listen to the meeting again and amend the minutes.
Well, so if it's okay with you, actually, if it's okay with the planning commission, I'd like to vocalize them to repeat it so there's no ambiguity, right?
These are the items that you would like reflected
Yeah.
in the minutes.
So, and then 3 to 5 days, I asked, and again, this is not hard and fast, but some kind of a response time. That's one of the things that the applicants would basically get upset about. It's like they take 2 weeks sometimes or a month to respond. So some kind of required response time, and then by default, especially if there's no real response, there needs to be a trigger for an early appeal process. A lot of the times we don't even know how to understand what's the breakdown, especially when a lot of time lapses. And ultimately, I firmly believe that you trigger an early appeal process, then you know right away from the front end what's going on, because we'll get that information, right? Because we're deciding at the long distance, right? By the time a lot of the issues have developed. And I would argue there should be at least a 2-week trigger, right? So it's been 2 weeks, no response, fine. Then the applicant has the right to bring it forward to the planning commission. And then one of the last things was just like an organizational flow chart, right? Something that kind of maybe that could included that basically explains what is the process, who's involved, who's the authority in the room when it comes to the architectural review or the design, and the standards, and ultimately the legal requirements, any violations of municipal code or potential if you don't follow these rules. Like, all this stuff needs to be on the front end, so the applicant really knows how to scope out their project and cost and everything, right? I keep getting calls that, like, I've dumped a ton of money into this, Peter, and I still don't know what's going on. Like, that to me is crazy. For the sake of economic development, I think these things would actually improve commercial projects for sure.
So I think we all heard the items that I think you want to be reflected in the minutes. So then with that, then do we have a motion, we make a motion to approve the minutes as
amended.
As amended?
If you agree with my statement.
If we can get a motion.
I'll make a motion to adopt the minutes as restated by Commissioner Hernandez.
I have a question though. So what should we expect in the minutes then? Because they're probably general, like discussion held, closed. So when we have discussions openly, like are we expecting those details to be literally in this document? Because they haven't been. I'm just wondering.
It's supposed to be.
So generally, we take action minutes, we don't take verbatim minutes, but it sounds like I've written down that, oops, press the wrong button, that Commissioner Hernandez would like it to be reflected in the minutes, the discussion of, and I've written down 5 recommendations, and so what staff will do is add them. So a concern regarding a $1,500 review fee, a request to write down people's rights on, I'm not sure if that's on an application, but we can re-review the discussion. That a recommendation for a 3 to 5 day response time, a early appeal process, and that there should be an organizational flow chart. So essentially we will amend the minutes to reflect that those recommendations were made as part or were part of the discussion.
And I could type up an email and forward it to, to staff, and, I know that there's Brown Act requirements, so ultimately that they can at least clean it up and send it to you. But I mean, it's already publicly stated, right? One of the things that wasn't mentioned was the required documentation of the process, which is extremely important.
I also just wanted to also add to that, I don't know if you guys would be in favor, and I can retract this motion, but it's going to be a whole nother month before this gets done. It sounds like, correct?
Yeah, that's the thing.
Is that correct?
I suppose it would depend. So your motion right now is to amend the minutes and approve them. So we would just amend them. And if I've not stated these now 6 items correctly, we will.
Okay.
I would ask for correction. However, if your motion is to have staff amend them and bring them back to you,
so you're frustrated.
That would take.
So it's actually 7 items, and it should reflect in today's agenda meeting,
Minutes.
because by amending it, you're actually adding these minutes into the October 23rd minutes. So you should have that in record on file through the city website.
Okay. Does this impact, because the minutes from what you're stating were not reflected correctly? No action was taken, you're saying?
No,
Is this
well, so here's
inhibiting-
the other thing to clarify, with all due respect to Director Kelly, the reality is, and the experience that I've had in elected office, you don't just take action minutes. You take minutes of the discussion, so you know the direction, because technically any kind of recommendation is still action because it's recommended, right? So if there's a vote that supports something that's a recommendation, you can consider that an action, because it ultimately has to, by default, it's a voted item, and it goes forward to whatever the recommendation is, whether it's to agendize another item, have a discussion, or actually bring forward a vote. It still is something you record. I'm used to having minutes that at least have summaries on every single item. Commissioner said this was what he wanted. the commission disagreed, he was voted down, she was voted down, like,
Right.
or they all unanimously approved, right? So you know what that item, what the, otherwise minutes give zero direction as far as what was the context of any meeting, and then whatever the direction was from that meeting. You
So I-
lose context completely,
Yeah.
so you don't
So
have any.
I
real-
appreciate that question. Can I?
Yeah.
Were you, okay? I don't
Yeah,
want to
please,
interrupt you.
please.
Because I think for me, then now I want to clarify. So first, let's amend the minutes, right? We'll do that as procedurally, but, or maybe even before, I would like to know, were those items part of, like you're saying, an action item that you requested, like as a
did.
commissioner?
I did.
Okay, and then that would be, then I think, yes, then it would be something that we would want to know, like, well, where do we go from there? Is that gonna, and obviously, we're gonna have to wait another month.
And
I mean, the reality is
yes.
that.
And
right?
that's exactly the frustration, I think, of the community is, a month, it's a long time for some people. And then if we're making, and I don't think it's anybody's, not blaming anybody, but either way, if a mistake or something didn't get recorded properly, it pushes the, what can tangibly be fixed or be done to a whole nother month. And there was a lot of frustrated citizens in the community who really felt like the process needs to be cleaned up. And just to kind of, not to belabor the point, but, the economy is really rough right now, and nobody's going to want to be opening a business if the planning process is confusing or there's some ambiguity. And like I said, that this is not an attack on anyone, but I'm almost in favor of, and I don't know if you guys are, favor of coming back even sooner than pushing it back a month, because I think the community deserves.
I just want to remind you that this item is about the minutes from the last meeting, and so if we don't want to get off agenda and start discussing another topic
Right.
that's not on the agenda, there is an opportunity at the end of the meeting on the agenda for commissioners to, by consensus, request items for a future agenda. And that would be a more appropriate time to talk
Okay.
about what you want to talk about in the
So-
future. This
Okay.
item's really just about the minutes from the last
So
meeting.
I just want to clarify an expectation for future meetings. There was a style of minutes being taken, which was, action-based pretty much. And now I believe what we're asking for is to have more summaries in the minutes that we're approving. That is
Yeah.
a change in practice. I just want to clarify that.
So we should talk about that at the
the
end as
end
an
of
item
the
to bring
request.
back to a
Right.
future meeting.
Okay, not
That's-
just for
that
these.
Well,
No.
Right.
to clarify, when I asked to suspend the rules, if you read the bylaws, the consistency in the bylaws say, technically, the majority has the authority to adjust or amend their own meeting, because it's the meeting of the commission. It's not the meeting of the city, it's not the meeting of the attorney, it's the meeting of the commission, which means you can give the direction, you can suspend the rules, you can say, we're gonna add this item in because it should have been added in, because that was the request from the prior meeting, from what the city attorney is recommending. It's basically pushing it out another month, right? This was requested, and we've already been leading in this direction. Technically speaking, a mistake from the city staff, whether intentional or not, by default delays the will of the commission.
You can suspend Rosenberg's Rules of Order, which is what you did when you reconsidered this item, but you cannot suspend the Brown Act. And the Brown Act says that you may only speak about things that are on the agenda.
Well, technically, the violation would have been from the fact that there was already a publicly duly noticed meeting that made those recommendations, and they weren't put into the agenda, they weren't even considered, and they weren't even added into the minutes. So there's already a violation.
That is not a Brown Act violation.
Regardless, because I get it, Brown Act is about electeds. It still is a violation.
Well, and the Brown Act is about appointed officials as well, so you are subject to the Brown Act. I think your expectations weren't met is what happened, not, there wasn't a violation of law or rule, but just,
I would say it's at least an ethical violation, because it was an ask, and it was so here's the thing, city attorney, right, all due respect. You specifically stated, and I would recommend everybody to pull up the meeting. You said, I don't know if you can do that, Commissioner. The reality is I heard, Ms. Kelly mentioned we're quasi judicial, right? So trying to restate our authority, understood. I'm not asking for a policy vote on the municipal code. What I'm asking for is a recommendation to send to the council. You said, I'm not sure if you can do that. I'll look into it and we will get back to you. Nothing of that sort happened.
So
Maybe
can
the
I?
I did say that, I didn't intend to prepare that myself, so maybe there was, the expectation was that it would be back at this meeting, and maybe that's not what staff
That's
expectation
what I
was.
stated. That's what the commission had
But
sent.
again, this item is, just considering
Right.
the minutes,
The
and so
minutes.
there is an opportunity at the end of the meeting to, by consensus,
Right.
recommend items for a future agenda.
Which is that's what I was alluding to earlier, because I think the items you mentioned, I think we're all
I
would love
yeah.
answers to. So in the spirit of moving forward and acknowledging that, I think, we've gotten validation that yes, those things were stated. Yes, those are items that we want to look at. For now, procedurally, we will approve with the amendments. If we have a second, I'm not telling you all what to do, but if we have a first and a second, and then at the end, let's all remember to bring this up as an action item.
Yeah.
I know, I
Yeah.
don't know if I can
Yeah.
ask for that, like, okay.
And just to ensure the commission understands my intentions, I really do want to increase and encourage the integrity of the commission. When things like this happen that break down the will and ultimately the momentum that the commission is trying to create in solving these issues, then by default, you're disintegrating the integrity. You have no reason to come if what you're saying has no value, right? If you're disregarded.
Right.
I'm not saying that's what happened, but that's definitely at least the visual, right? The optics is there was no regard. It's not even in the minutes. It's not even on the agenda, like by default. And so, we've had almost a month. I've had zero communication. City staff never reached out. So I would imagine that would be a serious thing, but if it's not serious, then why am I here?
So we will address it then. So first we have,
We have a motion on the table, and that was, I think it was, what did I say?
The motion was to approve the minutes with the amendments, and then I did read out 5, and then there was 1 added. So if what I've read out is what the commission wants to put in the minutes, that's a motion on the floor. And then what will happen is staff will just revise them. They'll be approved as amended.
Okay.
So to clarify again, there was 7. I said 7. I could read them again, and I could read them briefly. An addendum, know your rights. Number 1. Number 2, 0 fee preliminary review process. At the front end. Number 3, 3 to 5 day required response time. Number 4, early appeal process. Number 5, triggered after, that there's a trigger after 2 weeks of no response, that early appeal. Number 6, an organizational flow chart, right, with authority who responds to what position or what portion of the process. And number 7 is required documentation throughout.
okay,
Okay.
so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Abstention? Okay, motion carries on that. And then we will finish our agenda, and then we'll come back in our commission reports. Okay, thank you, everyone. 7.1, review of proposed Phase 3 zoning ordinance amendment language of City of Hollister zoning ordinance. And can we have the staff report, please?
This item is a continuation of the overhaul of the zoning ordinance. Phase 2 was recently adopted by the city council, and those amendments have taken effect, and that was related to cleaning up the use tables, some legislative requirements, as well as making sure there were definitions for each use listed in the zoning ordinance. Right now, staff and the planning commission is currently reviewing phase 3, which is the revision of permitting requirements. And this is the second study session that will be held regarding this phase. Tonight, you are just looking at 2 chapters, site and architectural review and conditional use permits. Site and architectural review is for improvements that are typically done to the exterior of a property, and there are some other exceptions that go along with that. Currently, the requirements for site and architectural reviews are found in several sections of the zoning ordinance, so anyone reviewing the zoning ordinance would have to know where to look to find out if they required either an administrative permit review or a site and architectural review. Right now, the way the code works is that it splits exterior improvements into 3 different permit types. So there is administrative permit review over the counter, and those are for very minor items, and there is no noticing of those improvements. Then there's administrative permit review, which the city currently uses as both a permit for a minor conditional use permit as well as a minor improvement to the exterior of the building, so it gets a little confusing for all involved. And again, even with administrative permit reviews, it's both in that section of the code as well as the requirements for permits are scattered throughout. So it is hard to determine, even for staff, where the appropriate section is and what does require a permit. In order to clean it up and make it easier on everyone, staff is proposing to eliminate the administrative permit review type. And then all exterior improvements would be within the S&A section, and then all uses that are considered a conditional use permit would be in the conditional use permit section. So they're clearly, can be clearly found. With the changes to the site and architectural review chapter, the current administrative permit review over the counter would change to administrative site and architectural review. And the way the new site and architectural review chapter has been designed is it lists everything that requires a permit under that permit type. So for administrative site and architectural reviews, these are considered very minor projects, but which the city needs to verify and review to make sure that they do meet the code, so that someone doesn't do a costly improvement and they haven't checked in with the city and then they have to fix it. So these are typically reviewed in under 5 days. Most are done over the counter, if not the same day, but we do these very quickly. Some of the examples for things that would qualify for an over-the-counter are the removal or addition of up to 2 doors and windows, murals painted on a building. That's a mural, that's a art project, not a sign. That would be a different project. And then minor accessory structures. So those would all be wrapped into that very quick review where we're just checking some minimal things, and then we would approve it quickly. And there's no noticing, so it does take effect pretty quickly. Minor site and architectural review is what is currently listed in the zoning ordinance as administrative permit review. So these types of projects are considered to be a little bit more intensive in what they're proposing. And what the process for that is, of course, they're going to apply. We do have our checklist online that lists everything that you need to submit for any project. And we do route it to our development review committee. So everyone within the DRC will look at the project and either will comment on it or provide conditions. So some of the examples that you can see up there, we have conversion to another use. Conversion to another use, building might review it and say, I have reviewed the plans, I have these concerns. Or I have reviewed the plans and I have these conditions of approval. Same with fire. Fire might say, I have reviewed the plans, you have to add fire sprinklers, or whatever the case may be during the review. These do require noticing, so once they are complete, we do notice it, so everyone within 300 feet of the project gets notified of the upcoming project, and they're invited to discuss it with staff if they chose to, and then it is approved at staff level. And any of these decisions can be appealed to the Planning Commission. One thing that staff is recommending is that housing developments with up to 10 units now be staff level review. That falls in line with the state seeking to streamline residential developments within the city, and 10 units is a lower number. We do see conversions and other minor projects where they do have more than what is allowed right now, and it requires Planning Commission review, even if there was 3 units, and that's a longer process, and we'd like to streamline that process for them. And then we would have major site and architectural review, which is the same as our site and architectural review now. These are projects that have the potential to create citywide impacts or impacts on the neighborhood, and it's appropriate to review them during a public hearing, a notice public hearing, so everyone has the opportunity to speak. Again, it's processed the same way that we would process the minor site and architectural review, where we do route it to the city's DRC, and there are comments provided. And then once complete, we schedule it for Planning Commission. Examples of these types of projects are major facade remodels, so that would be Heritage Plaza, which is undergoing a massive overhaul that changed the entire look of that shopping center. That went before the Planning Commission. A new drive-through. Drive-throughs can tend to have significant impacts depending on the layout and traffic. And then, of course, new structures. So any new commercial building, industrial building, a housing development with 11 or more units would come before the Planning Commission. And then along with these changes, conditional use permits, we do have an existing chapter for conditional use permits, but as I mentioned, we would like to shift it so that there are now minor and major conditional use permits. Minor conditional use permits would be the same as what we require for administrative permit reviews right now. And if you recall, in the use tables, we list what requires an APR, and those are uses, and then what requires a CUP, and then those are uses from the Planning Commission. So what we are proposing is that then the use tables get modified again and the APR comes off and it becomes a minor conditional use permit, which is really the appropriate use type. Because what you are looking at with both a minor and then a regular conditional use permit is the use and determining what are the impacts on the surrounding area. Minor are what the title implies. They are uses that maybe staff needs to look at it to make sure there's enough parking or to make sure that the minor nature of that business doesn't affect the surrounding area. They will be noticed, again, similar to minor site and architectural reviews. And then major are the uses which staff is concerned could have a major impact on the city. So a bar or nightclub would be one. There's alcohol sales, there's security concerns, there's lighting concerns. So that would go before the Planning Commission during a publicly noticed hearing, and again, gives people the opportunity to speak before the Planning Commission, who would then issue the decision. For the minor, the notice goes out, and then the director would make a decision on that. So based on tonight, if you have feedback for me or questions, the draft chapters will get amended as recommended. We continue to move along, and phase 3 is underway, and so we have a few more study sessions, and then once we are all complete, they'll be wrapped together in one public hearing to then move on towards the city council, and then after that, phase 4, which is the biggest portion of our overhaul, will begin.
Thank you. Do we have questions from the commission?
So yeah, what will that look like, the biggest overhaul?
The biggest overhaul is the rest of the zoning ordinance, so landscaping, parking.
So the phases are just of the different portions of the code.
Yeah, so what we did, because to overhaul an entire zoning ordinance at one time is a lot of work, and we have the general plan going on at the same time, as well as the housing element. We've broken it up into bite-sized pieces so that we can clean up the code as we move along, so that we're not waiting 2, 3, 4 years down the road. We know the code is problematic. There are inconsistencies within it, which we've discussed. It is not user-friendly whatsoever. It is very hard to read. There are things we need to do to make it more usable for both staff and the public, because not everyone does want to call staff and ask a question. Sometimes they do just want to look it up online. And so we want to make sure that they can understand what the laws of the city are. So that's our overall goal. And as we do pieces, it's to make sure to get the zoning ordinance in line with being more customer service friendly and tightening up some of these permit requirements so it's not so confusing, and really moving in a direction to help everyone out. With this phase and the permitting requirements, that will definitely help out staff as well as the public. And then with the next sections, it is the biggest section because we're talking, again, landscaping, parking. That will take quite a while. But these are the ones that we have worked on so far are the most important that we've identified.
And I think just to add, Commissioner Hernandez, a couple months ago, I'm not sure if you were here yet, but you might have been, but I think that's when they started talking about these pieces, and really validates what you were talking about earlier about the confusion and where do we go and who knows what, and things don't make sense, and why is it taking so long? All those things I think really is part of the work that you all are trying to clean up, right? That
Yes.
we all know this is happening, and so this is I think the effort. And I do appreciate that it's in chunks, because it's a lot
Yes.
of information to digest.
If I gave you an entire zoning ordinance at once, you would say, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to add, and the phases are what staff has kind of identified as being able to repeal a certain section and adopt the chunk at the same time. So phase one is ongoing as needed, but it was some state laws that we needed to update and implement into our code, which we've adopted a few chapters, ADUs, SB9, over the years. Phase two, I think we pulled out the use tables was what we decided phase two was. I think it was originally 3 phases. It's become 4. Once we get into 4, it'll become more. But phase 3 is our procedures chapters, which we have to come to you with a few chapters at a time so we can really talk about them individually. But what'll happen is once we've come to you for all these study sessions for phase 3, we will come back to you with a repeal and replace procedures ordinance that has all these chapters you've been reviewing over the months.
How did you come to these 3 categories or these 3 permits? Like, did
Oh,
you
for
review?
for tonight?
Yeah.
So if you recall the last meeting, we went over, I think, specific plans, review procedures, there's a couple others. So what we did was we took the existing 17.24 and the permit requirements that are jammed into there, and we've essentially pulled it out. So now each one has its own chapter with a title, can be easily seen in the table of contents on the zoning ordinance, and we're just going piece by piece. The 2 that you're seeing tonight, we just pulled together. We have others drafted. The 2 that we pulled tonight are essentially the ones that we will use the most. And so it requires, we wanted an in-depth review of these 2 that are really the permitting chapters, what requires a permit for this city, so that you can see that. And because it is such a change going from, even though it's just really a title, but we're going from administrative permit reviews, which are now function as a conditional use permit or an exterior improvement, and we're changing it to just site and architectural review and conditional use permit right now.
But also the change of, so it's not just the names, the titles, right? But also the specifics of the housing development.
So there are a few changes in there where we're trying to streamline review to make it faster for people, right? So there is the change to 10 and under would be staff level review for residential dwellings. We're also recommending that additions that are not visible from the public right-of-way to commercial buildings be allowed to be staff level, because they're not going to be seen. You'll never see it. There really is no impact other than site circulation. And then the biggest change, though, is instead of putting the requirements for permits in every chapter in that zoning ordinance, they're now in one list within the site and architectural review chapter, which honestly will make it easier for everyone.
Yeah, so from the design review perspective, what we're proposing in this draft chapter is really that change to have the 3 different levels of site and architectural review. And yeah, that the 10 units or less in small commercial projects is a big change, but that is staff's recommendation, and that's what we're here to get your feedback on. But we're recommending to both be in line with streamlining and state laws as they continue to change. These things are coming down the pipeline of we might get forced to these things, so get ahead of it and get it the way that we want it. But also we just think as staff, we see a lot of these minor projects get hung up in this long process, when if we implement through phase 4, through the design review process of the code and implementing codes that are satisfying to the council and the commission for landscaping and parking and those types of things, staff can just, meets the code on these smaller projects, and the ultimate goal would be to facilitate these things in the future.
What is the biggest change that you see on these zoning amendments?
Right now, based on where we're at, let's say right now, is mostly a function of formatting at this point and cleaning up the language. Within site and with this 2 that you're looking at tonight, the biggest change really is changing what we're calling a permit to another name, which, does sound scary, but it is just moving it to the appropriate permit type. And then within these uses that we've listed, there are 2 different items that we're recommending get downgraded in their review level. So like the 10 and under for residential dwellings, and the smaller additions to commercial buildings, and those will speed up the process for them. Minor facade remodels would still remain at staff. We don't tend to have too many of them. There's a few here and there. Mostly what we see is a major, like Heritage Plaza. They change the entire design of that. And then, changing a door out and a window out, it's basically over the counter. And then allowing for that over-the-counter permit type would also allow for minor modifications that don't impact anyone to an approved plan set. So, I don't know, at the back of the building, they have to change out a roll-up door to a regular door. They can just do the over-the-counter and be done quickly rather than requiring a full-scale review.
Yeah, right now, for like commercial changes for moving doors and windows, up to 2 is allowed at staff level through that administrative permit review process, which is this kind of mid-level process. Whereas anything else is full site and architectural review. What we're proposing is kind of a shift of both of those down, where really minor changes like relocating up to 2 doors or windows is going to be downgraded to that administrative site and architectural review. And then some of those what's major now, but it might be relocating 5 windows, just like minor changes to maybe they're stuccoing a commercial building. Those types of things we're proposing get downgraded to that mid-level review.
There's nothing that we're proposing where the review increases, let's say.
Efficiency.
We're trying to make it easier for everyone to get through the process, to get through it quickly, and then those things that are really important to the community. So a new residential subdivision, which you'd have to see anyways because of the map, or a 350, unit apartment complex still goes to the planning commission, which is the appropriate body. But for these minor things, it makes sense to do it at staff level.
So, and that's part of the law changes? It's more ministerial?
No. So the way that the state of California is moving towards residential developments is that residential projects are becoming more, there is not a lot of say that you have. And so what we're seeing is the state is requiring streamlined review of certain residential projects. And for 10 units and less, those are really very minor within the city. I mean, we're used to looking at subdivisions that are significantly higher. So with 10 or less, we are recommending that be more at the staff level. Now, if there is a map associated with that, so Everglen was 9 units, and there is a tentative map, that has to go to Planning Commission. That would not be within our purview. And that comes from the state.
But in general, I'm not sure if you understood what I was saying. In general, ministerial meaning we can't technically vote on it because state law dictates, and therefore it trumps any voice that we have.
Yeah.
So in essence, we have less and less local control. Is all I'm trying to point to the reality, right? And for the sake of small town San Benito County, the city of Hollister, very rural, we already lose a lot of voice, right, representatively. And if you think about the reality of what that means with the loss of input when it comes to the housing element in the general plan, then you're by default have no choice if urbanization becomes a de facto. You're forced into it. And that in and of itself, I would argue, is a problem that most community members don't understand or don't know about.
Yeah.
I would like to see, with housing developments up to 10 units. So it sounds like it's like, how long, what's the turnaround time for something like that? Because that sounds like.
So any residential development.
Okay.
So a tentative map, an apartment complex, it doesn't matter. Any residential development, the state requires city staff to review the application and to provide comments within 30 days.
Okay.
If we do not, the application is deemed complete and it moves forward.
I would like to also kind of set those same state standards to also something feasible, of course, for commercial.
So we actually do, as just a matter of rule, we follow the 30 days.
Awesome.
Yeah, we follow 30 days on everything. It's easier for not only the planning staff, it's easier for our development review committee to know that they're getting a 2-week review that mates into planning. So just for every application that planning is processing, we're following a 30-day review period on a completeness schedule, commercial or residential. It's easier than tracking 2 different things.
Yeah, it's just easier to follow the 30 days. And as a rule of practice, we follow that. I know not all cities do. for an example, I have an application in right now. It came in, it got assigned to me within a couple of days, and it got routed for a 2-week review because that allows, in case anyone's a little tardy on their comments, and then I have to put them all together in one clear and concise letter, and then it gets to them. And we almost always exceed that 30 days because the one thing you don't want to do as a planner is to miss that 30-day window, because then, especially for residential projects, it's now complete. There is nothing you can say.
Right. I mean, at the end of the day, even if you did say something for a housing development, you do say something, what's the next remedy at that point anyway?
So for like a housing development, let's say they submitted a map and there's no utility plans in there. And so we're not sure how are the lines working? How do the streets work? How does this work together? If I don't ask for it within that first 30 days, and it has to be everything. I can't ask for 3 items and then pick a new 3 items on the second review. And so as planners, it's just easier to follow those rules for every project because it allows for consistency and you're not constantly thinking, well, what is this project? What is the deadline? What do I have to tell them? And also for customer service, they're gonna wanna know, I need a floor plan, I need a, whatever it is, an elevation of the rear. So we give it to them all at once. I will say that sometimes, pretend they forget to give us a floor plan and you say, I need the floor plan, and the floor plan has to have, the square footage, and it needs to, dimension this room, and we will get a resubmittal and it'll be a floor plan, and they haven't given us the dimensions and they haven't given us the square footage. So it's another incomplete because they didn't follow the list. But that is why we give them a list, so they can literally check it off and then turn it in.
What's the worst case scenario if an applicant turns something in and they didn't have a utility plan? What happens in that?
It depends on the type of project. So this is the situation for any project. Some things that they forget to submit can be conditioned, and some they just can't because we need to look at it for whatever reason. So for example, if I have a new commercial building coming in and they don't show the location of the trash enclosure, then it's going to be incomplete that you need to show it. And the reason that we can't condition that one is for several reasons. One, we need to make sure that it meets the size requirements for Recology for pickup. 2, we want to make sure that wherever that trash enclosure is going, that it can actually be serviced. And 3, does that impact circulation at all? Because what we have seen is when it goes forward, the site then has to get changed. And the way the code works is they have to come back to Planning Commission if they're messing with the site and changing that circulation. So that to them is a disadvantage to move forward. If there is something that we have asked for and we feel like it could be pushed to a later date, we make it a condition of approval. So I think in some cases, the landscape plan was incorrect and didn't have the proper tree sizes, so there's a condition of approval that says you're gonna change it.
Just to interrupt, what I'm trying to get at is, because of you guys are under this immense pressure, if you get, I get it, you guys are busy, there's a lot of stuff, and there's no, it doesn't meet the, what do they call those trees? What do they call that? There's a tree ordinance, or there's a, whatever ordinance, you get what I'm getting at? There's not enough, what do they call that, trees?
Enough street trees?
I think I understand the question. So if we miss the 30-day deadline, it's deemed complete or whatever it might have been.
They're not
then so what would happen is we'd move it through the process. So if it was something that was coming to the commission, then we'd move through the process of bringing it forward to the commission, and then we would talk about whether it meets the code or not. If it was a commercial, you'd have a lot more discretion on whether you could deny a commercial project and have them revise it to meet the code. But if it was something that was deemed complete and is a housing project, if the standard that it's not meeting isn't objective, and even then, you're going to have a lot less say. So staff is really diligent about hitting that 30-day deadline, but also making sure we're thorough in those first 30 days to make sure we're not having incomplete applications, so that we can make sure we thoroughly are able to review the concept against the code.
Okay.
But it would come forward, and then there would be a potential discussion about whether it meets code or not.
It sounds like, and it's my assumption, that de facto, you're going to end up having a priority of residential because of the strict requirements over commercial. And the only other reason why I still don't understand on the commercial side, because if you're applying the same standards, why is there so much issues on the commercial side?
So,
And I really don't hear issues on the housing side.
So I think in this city especially, most of what the planning commission looking at is just a subdivision map, and engineers can crank those out, and those standards are in the subdivision map act, they're in the subdivision ordinance, and then they have to meet development standards. And those are pretty straightforward, right? There's not much they have to do there, and then that's it. They don't have to show us the design, they don't have to show us a landscaping plan, nothing. So that is essentially, for those types of projects, easier to get through to planning commission. And most of the engineers that are doing that, they're doing tons and tons and tons. They know how that works. Most MAP Act requirements are statewide. With other sorts of projects that we see, what we are running into, I think, part of the confusion may be that when people are trying to modify an exterior building, there are different things that come into play. And also, if you're modifying this site and it is an older site, there are definitely other extenuating circumstances that come into play. So if I'm trying to stick a trash enclosure in the middle of an alley, that's not your alley, we're gonna make a comment. If I need to put in a trash enclosure and I'm trying to stick it in a fire lane, you are going to get a comment. And I think that's, the other part is our code is very hard to read. And that's what we're trying to fix to make it easier for everyone. Most commercial projects that I have had, with the exception of Heritage Plaza, that did take a while, do move through very quickly. Heritage Plaza took quite a while because there was two problems. One, the applicant wasn't responsive, and it took the designer a while to modify the plans. And two, they could not figure out where to place their trash enclosure, and that held them up as well.
Yeah, we have a lot of sites in the city, especially our commercial sites, existing commercial sites, that are constrained by the fact that they were built so long ago that they don't meet the code now. So when you want to do an upgrade, it's difficult because you have to bring the site into compliance. And so it's a challenge with parking and landscaping, and trash enclosures is a difficult one too. So we have a lot of issues with existing sites and trying to make them work into their changes, and that happens a lot with our commercial. And then we don't see too many multifamily residential, but they tend to take a while as well in the process to get through comments.
Well, and I would agree with that, and I mean, even to be consistent with that, what, you know, the Director Callahan mentioned, basically, I mean, I've heard of plenty of issues that there's if there's any discretion to address the issue, it's on the side of the planning, not on the business, right? So their lack of understanding, or maybe the fact that meeting it to code and trying to bring it up, right? Like, I've noticed, and I've had so many people tell me, like, how you ask the question is the most important, because if you ask the wrong way, they're going to trigger all these requirements, and all of a sudden you're in a ton of money. Right, and it's and because there's discretion, technically there's less there. It becomes easy to downgrade priority wise that project, whereas if it's cut and paste or whatever on the residential
Automatic.
side, it's a lot easier for that to become de facto. Like, it's going to end up getting basically pushed through, right? Maybe because it's easy to comply, whatever that means. It just sounds like there really is no strong support on the commercial end, right? Because the front end of it, and I mean, I'm just stating specifically, and I'm seeing the head disagreeing with me. I'm stating there's so many different circumstances where I've gotten calls on scenarios where literally it's like, I'm trying to reach out and I'm getting no response, or they're saying that I abandoned the project, and here's my email. How did I abandon it? I'm responding, and so there's all these just nuanced issues. It's just hard to not imagine, right? Unless all these people are liars, they're calling me.
But I do
Without like
want
a
to.
specific example, it's hard to say because,
Well,
in
okay.
the planning process, it's not just planning, right? Engineering's involved, fire's involved, ecology's involved. What am I missing? Buildings involved.
I mean, I think
Airport.
I think the best example is the one that we ended up basically troubleshooting ultimately on the dais right here, where that feedlot, right, came forward, and we had to ask a ton of questions, and we dug in, and all we asked was, so you actually, as long as you don't change the ground and the material, then as long as you leave it undisturbed, and if there's any grading that that's the same material, then there's no violation? And the engineer said, no, there's no violation. Okay, so if we amended it to include do not change the material, then it'll pass. Yes, it'll pass. Okay, awesome.
troubleshooting.
We voted and we agreed and the project moved forward.
Right.
So we had to troubleshoot it.
Right.
To solve that issue.
I
So
do
that's
wanna
not
get
a
us-
planning issue. So the hard thing I think that is hard to understand with planning review is that we do involve all the departments, because what we don't want to have happen is you come with your beautiful commercial building to planning commission and you approve it, and then it goes to engineering for grading and improvement plans and they say absolutely not, redesign. Nobody wants to go through that. That is a very expensive mistake. So we involve departments because different departments are looking at different things. Fire is looking from a life safety standpoint. Engineering is looking at their requirements, so such as that project. And then planning is looking at what does the zoning ordinance say. So
Right.
if the zoning ordinance says, I don't know, it has to be 10 feet from the property line, it has to be 10 feet from the property line. If the zoning ordinance says you will have a tree every 30 feet on center, you have to have a tree every 30 feet on center. And so that is what planning sticks to. We are sticking to the code. And with commercial, there's a little bit of leeway with design, but, we usually take it to you for your opinion. But other departments have their own things that they're looking at.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
That seems very challenging. Who is leading the project ultimately? If so many departments are involved?
Ultimately, the planner leads the project because they're bringing it either
At the planning stage,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
planner
the
leads the
planning.
project and
at
then.
the planning stage.
Yeah.
So if a department tells me that that is their requirement, then that's their requirement. I will alert the applicant that that is the requirement, and they are free to call engineering. If they get a letter, pretend they're complete, we have no issues. Obviously, they're going to get a notice from me saying they're complete. But if they get a letter from staff, that letter says, these are the comments that we've received, and I'm listing them out for you, and these are the departments that made that comment, and then you can contact them. And that department may then later call me and say, I remove said comment, and I'll, make a note of it, and said comment is removed. And that's how that process works.
And sometimes they say, take it to the commission and recommend denial because of the parking, and then we bring it to you. So, yeah.
It's on a whole separate conversation. There literally was, I'm pretty positive, Director Kelly had mentioned literally that technically speaking, it's almost like Secret Santa, because the left doesn't, the one hand doesn't talk to the other hand, right? Because you had code enforcement having an issue, there was
Yes.
fining, and they're like, I'm doing what the planning is telling me, I'm actually following the rules, but I'm getting fined, and now I have $3,000 in fines. And they're like, well, that's not our department, so it's your problem kind of thing. And it's like, at a certain point, like, it just comes to a head, right? The project by itself blows up because there is no continuity, there's no communication, and ultimately, it's a lot of frustration.
I just want to add on that. I'm not an elected official, but I think, so I can't give direction to you guys, but I think I don't want to necessarily speak for the council, but I can only speak for myself. I think what we're trying to get at, because I get it, housing is more modular. Correct. It's new developments are easier because they're modular. In other words, it's just kind of one go. These guys are really good. KB Homes, they build thousands of these things. They're
Yes.
modular.
Are
So
they
for
really
you
good?
guys,
Is that the ones that made big errors over at across from Calavera School?
well,
There's actually class actions on
Which
some
one
of
was
those
that one?
things, too.
but
Kuiper
you,
Homes.
but you understand they're more modular. It's kind of one and go, boom, boom, boom. They're professionals about it. When you have a small business, it's going to be more okay. Like as Peter's point, it almost seems like an old supervisor once said. Sometimes it's easier to ask for forgiveness than for permission. And I'm not. That's not advice, but. Because once you do something, you open this Pandora's box because you're not up to code for here, you're not up to code to here, you have to do these modifications, you need a ramp, whatever it may be. But it sounds like newer developments are going to be inherently easier for the planning department, engineering.
It depends. I mean, obviously, a residential subdivision, again,
Okay.
we're working with a very a formula. A ground-up commercial project, right, on vacant land, can still have many issues from the first get-go because sometimes the circulation does not work.
Okay.
And just because they've had an expert design it, doesn't mean it's going to work in the context of this city. And so they'll get comments on that. It is harder when you're an older business and you want to do anything to your property, because if I am a tenant and I upgrade the inside of my building, which for the most part, that doesn't involve planning, but you have to come to current building code, and there's nothing we can do. That's a state regulation.
And I think, just to carry on, like, 'cause I can't speak for the planning, I'm not the planning, the commission or the city council, but I think what we're trying to say is there was an applicant that came in and we troubleshooted it. All they had to do was one minor adjustment and everything went away. And I think that's the frustration is I personally would have liked to see more discretion from the planners, like, hey, why don't you tell the applicant not to do this? And maybe you didn't know, but I think it's a discretion of, like, somebody could get hooked up on one minor thing, and that's the frustration I think that I'm personally seeing is they almost walk themselves into this, like, and I think that's the frustration. And I get it, that's not your job. It's like your job is just to see what they submitted, but it's like,
I mean, I will try not to speak to this project too specifically, but there was a lot of conversations between the planning department and the engineering department throughout this process of how to make that comment go away, and engineering was standing firm on it, so we could not change the comments to the applicant, and then it changed to the commission. So I do understand your frustration. I think part of where we're trying to go with what's within our zoning code and within the planning department's ability to reflect changes is to work on these procedures. And then ultimately, as we get into phase 4 and really are talking about design and talking about zoning regulations, to make amendments, the whole code, like Erica said, needs to be repealed and replaced with a modern code, because we do have outdated standards. As we get into those standards, that's going to be really nuanced conversations that we're having with the commission. You know, we're going to be talking to you about trees, and that's going to be Erica's favorite study session, because she's really into landscaping. But what our ultimate goal, and this is a long project, it is a phased project. We're going to be having study sessions talking about one chapter at a time, 2 chapters at a time for a while with you guys. But the ultimate goal is we need, as a city, to have these updated standards so that staff can apply them. Now, is it going to solve all our problems? No, because we have Title 16 and we have Title 15 and we have building codes and these types of things that also are impacting projects as they come through. But where we have power as the planning department, the planning division, the planning commission, is to fix our zoning issues and talk about what requires planning permits, what conditions we can put on projects to make them, you know, if we have a standard set of conditions from a planning perspective, then we don't have to talk about whether or not they'll meet those things, right? So that's where we're trying to go with these zoning upgrades, with these study sessions, fixing our planning procedures, working on our planning permits, downgrading them, and then ultimately, as we get into phase 4, which hopefully will kick off more so after the general plan's adopted, because then we can work on zoning that meets new general plan policy, right? Because if right now the general plan says one thing in regard to landscaping, and then in the future the general plan says something else, then we got to change the code anyway. So design requirements, zoning requirements, that's that phase 4 that's going to follow once we have general plan policy to implement with new code. But I think that we do hear you, we do hear applicants. Internally, we are working on better communication with our fellow departments and our fellow agencies, but where planning has purview is kind of at the planning stage. Our job is to kind of say, what are your requirements? What are your requirements? What are your requirements? And try to package those things together. It's harder for us, though we do try to facilitate, you know, conflict. It's harder for us to say, you can't have that requirement, engineering department. You can't have that requirement, fire department, because that's why they have their purview and their requirements as well, right? We kind of have to mesh those into our permits.
And if a project is denied and then sent to the commission, they don't have to pay anything, right? It's not like the 3,000 fee for an appeal. Was it 3,000 or 1,500?
If a project is brought, like a site and architectural review, if we get to a point where between staff and the applicant, we can't make a recommendation for approval, it will still come to the commission. It would be, the only thing that would be an appeal where there's an additional fee for processing an appeal is if, let's say it was a staff level decision. In this example, minor SNA, right? In our new code policy, a minor SNA is approved or is denied, then someone could appeal that to the commission. That's processing the appeal application. But for a major site and architecture review, that would still be before the commission. So whatever the recommendation might be, that's not a fee. The decision is still at the commission, whether it's a recommendation for approval or denial or just consideration.
And by staff, you mean staff of the planning department?
It would be the community development director, or for probably the lesser of major and minor, or minor and administrative, it would be staff level, yes, designated. But ultimately, it would come under the community development directors. As
The
the
main reason I
staff.
bring it up is because in past, just items that come in front of us, I see all the attachments of the email communication, the multiple requests to meet with certain individuals, certain departments, and then just the refusal, right? Just holding strong. And I feel like that's something that is not really, I don't know, it's not really a process, it's more of a personal choice, right? And like this last project, again, it was through talking to the individual holding up the project and picking up on the cues of how things were being presented that we were able to dig in and figure out, okay, that's the issue there. And I recall the engineer from the applicant asking very related questions and asking for a meeting just for clarity. But you can't enforce a meeting between something outside of your department, right? So I understand that's a challenge. So I think I don't know if this will address that, but that's another item, I think, of
Yeah.
like.
Maybe we put that on an action.
Maybe, again, but I'm just saying, like, this could only do so much, but there's still individual decisions that are made that hold up things for businesses and for new businesses or projects. But that's a separate conversation, I
Yeah.
think.
We do continue to try to work on that process to make it easier for everyone. In the last 2 years, maybe, we've created a comprehensive list of all the submittal requirements that's posted on our website, and people can easily go down the list and check it off, what applies to them. And that has actually sped up the review of most projects. We continue to post additional information or focused applications so that people can get through the process more quickly. So now we have a conditional use permit application that really guides people into answering questions on that application form, whereas what we found before was people give us a submittal and we're missing half the information we actually need to process it. So we're guiding them through the process to make it easier. It is a kind of a fact of the way this goes that people will submit and they will omit a lot of the necessary information. And we will have to ask them to resubmit. Resubmittals do typically tend to go faster unless it was they did not listen to anything we had and they basically are reapplying on the second round. So we do tend to do the second round faster. Most of my projects have gone quite quickly to you. The Polytechnic Academy was held up because we were waiting on a focused traffic analysis. That takes time to prepare and review. And then I think I've had the conditional use permit for the San Benito Billiards, and that went through 2 reviews because the first review was missing vital information. And so we needed that information to properly condition.
But so for today, right, we're looking at
Today is-
chapters.
Do you have any comments on these chapters?
Yeah, 17.9.
Yeah, on
Can we go? Yeah, let's go
procedures,
to public
yeah.
comment. Is there any public comments on this item?
We do not have any public comments.
Okay, thank you. And is there any further discussion or a motion on this item?
I don't have any more discussion, but I'll make a motion if we're all ready to, what
There's
would
no-
that motion be?
there's
I was
Yeah,
just gonna say, I don't, and
There's
I
no
apologize
motion.
for that.
motion.
It's just
Oh,
to
I was
be-
automatic.
It's
Okay.
to be continued.
It's
To be
information.
continued.
Thank
Okay.
you.
It's not till what, final phase or whatever that.
So, yeah, so we're slowly, and this is going in pieces, and your next one will probably be long like the previous one was. And then,
Okay.
once we're all done, it gets wrapped together into one for a review and recommendation.
Thank you. So then let's move on. I think this is where we
That
can
was the
talk
last
about our
item.
action. 8.1 Planning Commission reports. Is there any reports? And is this our opportunity then to also request?
Yeah, so if you look at your agenda, it says that this is the time for commission to refer public or commission questions to staff, request staff to report to the commission on a matter at a future meeting, or direct staff to place a matter on a future agenda. And then, so nothing would be discussed tonight, but rather brought back at a future meeting.
Recommendation, yeah.
Perfect. So who would like to start?
So I obviously would appreciate to bring the recommendations back, or the 7 items, for discussion, ultimately for vetting, and ultimately, to tighten up the recommendations to be forwarded to the council for their consideration. And then, at that point, it's at their discretion adoption. So that's my recommendation, but we're on the what is it, on the
Commission reports.
reports. So one just final point on, I think, kind of putting a cap on the whole discussion, or at least on my end, is, speaking to Councilman Resendez and kind of obviously paying attention to the meetings and sensing the consideration of the council, or at least what I would imagine sounds like the will of the body in general, is there's a big sense of urgency for economic development. We need to grow our economy. We need to focus on commercial, small business, right? Creating opportunity, or at least facilitating opportunity. And, they're at the high level, right? And we're dealing with obviously a huge deficit at the federal level. And now it seems to be the ALAO, had just mentioned that there was an $80 billion deficit expected this next year. So the bottom line is, it looks like the trend is going upwards in the deficit, which oversimplified interpretation means at the local level, there's going to be resources cut, or there'll be less revenue for our local economy to address, the city services and the things necessary. So that being said, that's why they're wanting to see where are we at with commercial development, and how do we get to where we need to be to grow. That's what, the biker rally is another example. Where do we need to be? So that's why I think these things have to have a sense of urgency. I would maybe like to at least consider having maybe another report or presentation on the current layout of the land, of what is our zoning as it applies to commercial, what are the amount of projects that we have that are in the queue, which ones have not been able to go through, maybe potential issues, and maybe even what is the potential of these economic projects if they actually get fulfilled, right? If they actually get passed and ultimately come into our community. Something that kind of gives us at least a better understanding, and I think that could also filter back to the council.
Like a summary of current applicants?
Current applicants, yeah. I mean, I didn't know Panera was coming into our backyard until it was pretty much coming out, right?
I agree.
I want clarification. So what was the action item? I'm sorry, just if someone can refresh. You gave recommendation two recommendations.
So the first one was the 7 items.
Correct.
For the review process.
And you wanted to see that implemented, or you said?
No, so that would be a recommendation for us to have a conversation about it at the next meeting. And that way we can basically make sure that they're, through the attorney and ultimately staff, to clean up the language to make sure that it goes forward as certain recommendations from the council.
So that should have been reflected today?
That would have been today if it would have come forward today, yeah.
Is that your interpretation? I don't know. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. So should it, Mr. Hernandez felt like it should have been reflected today. I don't know. Did you guys get that interpretation? I just want to make sure.
Well,
I understand the reflection today. I think where staff was at the last meeting, and we will reflect it in the minutes that was the reflection, but where staff was at the meeting, and where I think we'll have to continue to be at, is that as far as discussions of the body of the planning commission, we can only have a discussion about things that are within the purview of the planning commission. But what we can do is provide an additional memo to the memo that was provided if there's more that we can just informationally provide you about these things, so at least staff can give a response.
Because I'm just confused. There was something you wanted actionable, something tangible. I think.
So it sounds like I'm going to say it again. It's just putting these recommendations into basically something that gets forwarded to the council and gives them the discretion to consider those as potential amendments to their policies, right? Because we're not policymakers, they are. And that way they can start to implement it into the planning process.
Gotcha.
If that is the will of the city council's body.
Yeah. Well, I agree with that. I don't know if that's the will of this body, this board, but I do agree with your recommendations or our recommendations.
I mean, and technically, it's kind of going into next month to really at that point is to tighten that list up, forward it to the council, and then at that point on their end, they're like, okay, we know exactly what the commission wants. Let's talk about it, and we could say, yeah, we don't agree, or maybe we should talk about it, and on their end, they would have to go into a whole cleanup process to make it legal and ultimately something that they can officially adopt into their process, if that's their will, right? At that point, we're just handing it off to them for them to decide.
And so right now, each of us will add, if you have like a report or an additional.
No, I don't have anything else to add.
Well, and I had made 2 recommendations. The second one was for another agenda item that actually talked about the actual projects. What do we have in the queue? What are the potentials? And ultimately, if there's any delays or issues, right? What are the things that are happening with those projects?
And just to set expectations on that one, we'll have to keep it very high level, likely not naming the project, because we can't bring a project that isn't publicly noticed for any sort of discussion. So it might be like there's a restaurant, a gas station, so something general and high level if that's brought back.
Well, I mean, even if we had that, and then maybe just the number of those projects, and even if we knew the industry, I think we could easily surmise what the potential is of it, right?
Yeah, and I think just 2 expectations again. I can definitely work on a memo, so at least from an informational perspective, I can address all of these items to the commission with information, but from what the planning commission can discuss, and as it relates specifically to projects that aren't before you, I could work on a high level list, but we might not be able to discuss it here, even if it is tangentially planning related, like things like fees, that even to make a recommendation to the council, that is not the body of the planning commission's purview to make a recommendation on a fee like that. But I can provide information to the planning commission informationally about all these items, and I will bring back what can be brought back for discussion.
Another related item, I think, was the way the minutes are recorded, I guess, or reported. That is a change from what you're used to. And I was wondering if we want to discuss that next meeting, just changing the way, if that's even an option. So
It should be. I mean, that's pretty standard practice in most boards, regardless of the.
So putting it on the agenda as a discussion item for us.
Yeah.
Okay. For next month.
Just so we know, like, what's the possibility.
What's
there.
your expectation?
Exactly.
That's good. Anything else for you?
I mean, yeah, so I'm trying to dissect a little bit what Director Kelly had mentioned, because, I mean, anything that we say is not policy decisions. Technically, there's no violation until I ask for a vote for something that's not even within our own jurisdiction. Making recommendations, it's literally just, this is what we're thinking. You tell us if we're wrong or if you completely disagree. So here's the reality, right? Again, getting back to what I had mentioned earlier, if this doesn't happen, if there is no real discussion about the actual granular elements, councils, elected bodies especially, are very high level in the policy, right? They have to get into the weeds a little bit to understand what are the intrinsics. Otherwise, you're making a decision that might have a negative impact, not even realizing it because you really don't understand the implications of that decision. So it's really important that we're able to give recommendations so that they can say, okay, we have the info, we have staff, you tell us, and then they can clean up whatever their thinking is and then apply that in a policy process, and ultimately with the direction, or at least the guidance of the city attorney, then you make it an actual legal element in your own policy process. If we don't even give them anything, they're not going. All I know is anytime I talk to Councilman Resendez, and at times when I've talked separately to Mayor Stevens, as an example, they only know what we know, which is very little, which means they're not able to solve the very problems that we're talking about because they don't know, we don't know, then who knows
And who
besides
knows?
staff?
And so if unless you have, I wanted to add to the request that you had, did you have another? On that data report, the general data, is there also an opportunity to know how many were denied, how many projects in whatever categories were denied this year? So for example, if there were 2 restaurants that were denied.
Yeah, we could definitely provide anything that's had a decision is a lot easier
Okay.
to give information on than an in-process application. I suppose what, if I could ask, just so I make sure that I provide the information that you'd
Yeah.
like, what,
The purpose of that is just to kind of give us an, because we have just, from what we hear, right? So we have a narrative of different people, what they tell us,
May I have a
right?
suggestion?
But this, yep,
I was going to make it easier. I think have what was denied, but maybe you guys could even make a list of why it was denied. You can, and
That
a
was my
list, and
part
it could be.
yeah.
It doesn't have to be a nuanced list like
No, right.
each one needs to be complete nuanced, but you could have 3 categories. One maybe is engineering or something like that. 2 is something just
yeah.
to give us some kind of indication. And then if four or 5, 1 equals fire, 2 equals circulation, whatever, you guys get general point, right? And then you'd have the projects, so then we can then identify what's holding most of these projects up. Oh, it's circulation's holding most of these projects up. And then you'd have a list of the projects and then in Excel or however that would look. So I don't know if that makes it easier or over.
no, I think where I was just going with the question, and I understand, it was, this is all planning applications, correct?
Yes, yes,
Okay, so
correct,
I can
yeah.
definitely do that.
Awesome. Thank you.
I, from an expectations perspective, I can't give you building and engineering application because that's not
Right.
applications we process. But I can tell you that there's probably incredibly few. That's going to be a handful.
Okay. And I think, and then for me, a follow-up with this discussion we had is also, are we going to be reviewing in any of these chapters, not just an appeal process, but a complaint process of, for example, if there's a specific department that's not getting back to somebody, right? Or if there's a specific entity or person, I think with any business, government, does what have you, there's always a complaint process, right? And so I think when people only change when they're held accountable, right? If you just, turn around and, oh, no big deal. But if we hold people accountable, then people are more apt to follow and respond appropriately, right? So I think, is there a complaint process, or is that part of the things that we would, and if it's not in our purview, then I guess it's just informational, and then we could figure out, with our city council, maybe they need a complaint process. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm trying to, well, it's definitely not something in the zoning code. So, and I think from what is the process by which to complain about your planning application, that is the appeal process, right? So I think complaints, it's definitely not something appropriate for a zoning ordinance. It would be just the,
Do you know what I'm getting
notification.
at with the?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're talking about complaining about a particular employee, and I think the process with the city is the same as it is with any business. You're going to talk to their boss, you're going to talk to the city manager. I mean, it's not documented as such in the code, not that I've seen.
Right.
And not in the zoning code for sure, but I haven't seen it anywhere else in the municipal code. But I don't think that it's typically in municipal codes because the municipal code is the law, right? So
Okay.
a complaint process might be a form on the city's website,
Right.
or it's just talking to the person's boss. Like it's
Okay.
like if you go
Like a
get bad
normal-
service
right,
at a
like
store.
anybody.
Well, you were on the school board, Carla, right?
Yes.
So technically speaking, and I understand the reality of privacy elements with speaking about staff,
Right.
potential liability, but technically speaking, that's why, whether it's a commissioner, or elected body, they can have a discretionary element to their process to create a closed session type
Right.
conversation to basically not
Right.
allow it. But technically, as the appointed body or even the elected bodies, they have a right to that information. They should have the right to discuss it, to understand it. Again, It's all for the sake of implementing the will of the voters, which
Right.
are the ones that, the taxpayers that are paying for,
Right.
yeah, for all the services, including city staff.
Yeah, but, okay, thank you for answering, and you're right, Commissioner Hernandez, I was just kind of thinking, because we're all kind of circling around something, but, you know, maybe, maybe it goes to another entity. So, and I'll speak to who I need to speak to at City Council about that. Okay, do we have any other, or we're good?
I was going to make a motion to adjourn.
Oh, we have one more.
Oh.
8.2, Planning Division Report. Staff, do you have any reports?
Yes, I'll just reiterate that I will work on at least a memo and bringing back what is within the Planning Commission's discussion purview, certainly. And then we are having an objective design standards workshop on December 2nd. It's a Tuesday. It's at 4, and Amber, correct me if I'm wrong on the end time. It either goes till 7:30 or 8. So 4 to 8, Tuesday, December 2nd. It's at Payne's Restaurant in the back room. It's going to be essentially a kind of walk in, come stay however long you want, talk to staff, talk to our consultants who are working on the project. We are talking about objective design standards for new mixed use and residential projects in the downtown, to implement objective design standards so that we have some local say over how development happens in our downtown. And then there's going to be a presentation at the beginning just about the process, and then we're going to do another presentation, I believe at 7:30. Same presentation. You don't have to go to the presentation, and then the whole time you can just walk and talk to staff, see some images and things like that, give feedback, and then head out. So December 2nd, 4 p.m., please help us spread the word.
And City Attorney, we don't have to necessarily be worried too much about Brown Act for that one because it was a posted meeting, kind of.
It was crossing my mind, but then when Eva described it as a walk-in, one at a time, talk to staff, it made me feel more comfortable with it not needing to be agendized if you're all there at the same time, because it's not really not a meeting where there will be one big discussion. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess
Okay.
I'm presenting it for the public and then for the commission to help spread the word. Objective design standards will return to you as a body when it's drafted as well. But
Okay.
yeah, help us spread the word to the public and to your constituents and those types of things to have
Awesome.
people come.
Thank you.
And technically, there is no violation, even if the whole body is there, as long as they're not
Right.
discussing actual business.
Mhm.
So, but the optics is obviously not appealing, which means most bodies will separate at least to where it's at most 2 people next to each other. So it's because there's no serial meeting that way.
Yeah,
So
we're
2
not all going to
individuals
get
can-
together and
Yeah.
discuss.
I just want to say that it's nuanced, so that's not necessarily true, but
How is that
We
not
can-
true?
because they are talking about something within your jurisdiction, which is design standards. And so if you're
No,
all.
I know, but the
It doesn't
members
require
are.
you it doesn't require you to necessarily discuss it. So if you think about a situation where we're here in this meeting and maybe staff is giving a presentation to you about a particular topic and you don't engage in discussion, it still needs to be agendized. So it's similar, where you're all hearing the same information that you'll eventually come back to your board for decision. But I think the way that Eva described it, this particular meeting, I think that if you each chose to attend, you wouldn't necessarily do so at the same time.
Right.
You wouldn't necessarily all hear the same discussion.
Right.
It's,
And it's community.
yep.
Well,
Yeah,
and-
yeah, it's a community workshop that we were trying to get community feedback. And at this point in the process, we have a survey online as well.
Well-
And then so that we can finish drafting and bring it
Yeah.
before you.
And to be clear, though, technically, it's information that's the whole public, right? The whole idea of a serial meeting is it's private, and it's basically intentionally trying to avoid, basically trying to collude to a certain extent behind closed doors. I just know that when the county had their meeting about Highway 25, the new VMT requirement, the law had passed that now changed the whole thing with the cost mechanism of the vehicle miles traveled. All the supervisors were there, and it was specifically about a policy, but they weren't together, right? So,
Right. Yeah.
so I guess there's disagreeing interpretations of the brown.
But we can attend.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the
Yes,
risk is
enjoy.
just high because it is an item, right, that
Yeah.
we've discussed before.
I mean, you
and
obviously want
We
to.
would be talking about the topic.
Yeah, and it depends on who's holding the meeting. In this
Yeah.
case, it is
Yeah.
the city holding the meeting and you're planning commissioners of the
So
city.
just stay away, right?
Just stay, yeah,
Stay
just
away
say
from
hello and that's, okay.
Stay away from each
Are
other.
we all, we don't not have to make a motion to adjourn, everyone. I have a little note here that says, so we're good. So, meeting adjourned at 7:54.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.